To anyone living in that house, which would sometimes include my Uncle James, his wife, my cousins and their various boyfriends or girlfriends, and any number of neighbor kids that didn't have a place to go, you'd think nothing had happened. The train came about every hour. So, almost as if on autopilot, Granny would get up out of her chair, she'd turn down the radio, she'd sweep up the coal dust that had swept in through the open window, and she'd go tend to whatever was on the stove. And there was always something on the stove. See, the years of owning a diner serving hungry coal miners made it pretty much impossible for her to cook small. With a working mother and a coal mining father, my father spent a lot of time with his grandparents, Ida and William, his grandfather, who was named after, which suited him just fine. He'd help Grandpa Bill every day with chores around the farm, and they'd spend hours interpreting each other's dreams, something we'd do together when I was yet born. They do this under the shade of a particular willow tree that had struck by lightning many times. It's all gnarled up and scorched. My father would ask his grandfather, could we just put that tree out of its misery already? And Grandpa Bill shook his head and said, no. I wouldn't cut so much as a twig off of that tree. It would be a sin. A sin. And he left it to that. And he asked my father never to mention it again. Grandpa Bill would smoke his corncob pipe, and Billy would watch the pipe smoke in the wind, and they'd talk about dreams and what they could mean. Grandpa Bill would dream about his grandmother, Grandma Liz. He believed that she'd come to him in dreams from time to time to teach him something, give him a message, or else just to sit and visit. Grandma Liz is a celebrity in those parts. It's kind of weird. She'd come to the old home place, then it was Virginia, before the Civil War, from Kentucky with her husband Harmon on an ox-drawn cart when Grandpa Bill was 7 years old. She brought with her a wealth of experience regarding what we call the old ways. So things that her mother and her grandmother taught her from the old country mixed in with all sorts of herb and plant medicine that was learned from the Native Americans. Combining these two made her a clever woman, what some folks would call it. Today we'd probably call her a witchy woman, but she wouldn't take too kindly to that. She was known to bring about all manner of magical and mystical, miraculous things. Among the many things she was said to be able to do, she could cure sick mothers and babies. She could heal the croup, thrush mouth, fevers. She could stop bleeding with her hands by saying a few words over a cut. It wouldn't stop any other way. She could divine the location of water to dig a well. She'd make these clever bags to protect the livestock from predators. She was even known to be able to undo curses and hexes. When you were sick, you might look for a doctor, though the next nearest one was a county over, so most people went to Grandma Liz. If you thought you were hexed, you looked for a hex doctor, so Grandma Bill fit the bill either way. There are still people in that holler community today that know her name, though she's been dead for over 75 years. But that holler community isn't what it was 75 years ago. I don't mean to say that it should have stayed the same. I mean, change is constant. 75 years is a long time for things to change. I mean that it's not there anymore. So the nearest town's Harmon's Farm. It's about 10 miles away by car, about half that as the crow flies, such as the nature of roads in Stonewall, West Virginia. This is Stiltner, West Virginia. Population 25512. Population 200, zip code 25512. Population 200 at its height. You might notice something a little strange about that town. The last couple miles are a little tough getting there. You see, you could send them a letter today. The zip code's still active, but the post office is underwater. So in the late 1960s, Congress got this idea that rather than stop the coal, oil, and natural gas industries from clear-cutting our forests and blowing up our mountains and poisoning our waters, instead, they pass a law to move the people out of the way of big business. A practice that still goes on today. I guess some things don't change. In preparation for today, I called my friend Kayla, who works for a not-for-profit, Keeper of the Mountains. I asked her, what's the biggest threat to West Virginians today? Is it strip mining, mountaintop removal, or fracking? Her answer? The politicians that allow all three. So not content to leave an ounce of soil unturned if there might be coal in it, these multinational companies start by removing all of the flora from the mountainside. When I say mountainside, that's not accurate. I mean the entire mountain. Now the wood legally can't be sold commercially as timber, so it's burnt or else illegally dumped into the valleys. Afterwards, literally millions of pounds of explosives are used to remove as much as 600 feet from the elevation of this mountain. Now, that's a practice that can go on as close as 300 feet from a residence, a home, 24 hours a day. So these valley fills, as they're called, all that rock, just gets dumped in the valley. And that's effectively buried more than 2,000 miles of headwater streams and polluted many more. So afterwards, the coal has to be cleaned before it can be sold. And so this is a process that combines the coal, the raw coal, and leaves behind coal dust and clay in this toxic slurry that contains arsenic, mercury, lead, and chromium. Now, in an area where a large number of people rely on private well water because there is no public water, many people are shocked to hear that even the public water service is in violation of EPA safe drinking water standards in many areas. Quote, do not ingest, cook, bathe, wash, or even boil water. That's what the governor said in 2014. All in all, more than 500 of the oldest mountains in the world are wiped flat off the earth. Most of those in Kentucky and West Virginia. That may not sound like a lot, but you've got to think of the mammoth size of these mountains. All in all, if you were to stretch those 500 mountains end to end, they'd stretch from Washington, D.C. to San Francisco. But back in 1969, the well on Grandpa Bill's farm was still cool and clean. And the number of mountains left in West Virginia was the least of their concerns. Due to this kind of devastation caused by these industries, numerous deadly floods and landslides killed thousands and caused millions in damage, directly related to this mining practice. Congress's solution? Move the people. So a dam was to be built. Now it's still there, remember? The dam would completely flood the entire community of Stiltner in an attempt to control the runoff water. So as construction started on the East Lynn Dam project, the government began buying out property surrounding the future lake. So altogether, 350 families on the mountain would be relocated. This is one of many stories like this. Grandpa Bill's land, where they had been since the 1800s, was one of those farms. He took the move hard. The farm off Brush Creek was all he had ever known. So he had lived on and worked on that land from the age of 7. Now, nearly 70 years old, he didn't really feel like he had much to live for. Within a year, he was dead. My grandmother Thena said he died of a broken heart. By that time, my father was a senior in college. He was the first person in our family to attempt that, which actually drove a wedge between him and his family. See, they saw little Billy as getting above his raising. That was their way of saying that he turned his back on the family. So maybe it was this kind of stress, maybe it was something more, but shortly after Grandpa Bill's death, my father began having dreams of his grandfather. And then he'd see his grandfather at the age he was when my father was a boy, and they'd be on the farm doing some chores. And suddenly my father would have a moment of lucidity, where he'd remember that Grandpa Bill had passed away. And he'd say as such, he'd say, Grandpa Bill, you can't be here, you passed on. And he'd say, yeah, son, I know I'm dead. Just listen to me, I'm trying to tell you something. He'd say, you remember the spot on the path halfway between the house and the barn? And of course he did. My dad'd been there 1,000 times. Well, I left you something here. He'd point his finger down at the ground. Now, Grandpa Bill was known to bury things. That's the weird thing. So after the banks collapsed in 1929, he didn't trust them. So he put a lot of his money into silver and gold coins and bullion. Something my father would do and later pass on to me. I still have a bunch. So I asked my father, did you ever go back? No. He was in his senior year of college, and he had way too much to lose. If he flunked out of school, he'd be a laughingstock of his Howard community. So after he graduated, he was just trying to earn a living. He got married, he got divorced, he got married again, he had a daughter, and then he had a son, though everybody said the son was more handsome than the daughter. Life went on. He just never been back. He hadn't made the time. So I asked him if he had a dream more than once. And he said, yeah, he had many, many times. So was it always the same? He said, no. Every time he had the dream, Grandma Bill seemed to be a little more upset. As though he hadn't been and Grandma Bill knew. I said, well, what happened? He said, well, they just stopped having it. My father supposed that Grandma Bill got tired of waiting. Now, my father raised me like he was raised, to pay attention to dreams. These were messages. These were opportunities. Hadn't he raised me to share dreams around the kitchen table like his grandfather raised him? And wasn't interpreting dreams part of our DNA? And here was the mother of all dreams. And he'd never gone? We had to go back. We never did. Life went on. I grew up. I moved away. I went to college. I got married. He grew old. In February of 2015, my father was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and the doctors deemed him not a candidate for treatment. He wouldn't receive chemo. He wouldn't receive radiation. He waited to die. I was working as a theater manager at the time in the Performing Arts Center in Upstate, making far too little money for far too much work, and the only thing I could think about was we never went back. So I began to hatch a plan. I planned to take Dad back to Stonewall in the summer when things slowed down at work. So around my birthday, my sister called me. Dad had moved back in with her in Ohio when he got sick. And she said if I wanted to take Dad to West Virginia, and she hoped I did because he wouldn't stop talking. She said I needed to do it now because she didn't think he was going to make it to us. When we arrived in Wayne, Easter weekend, 2015, we checked into the only motel in the county. And we made an early start the following morning. So over the next few days, I continued to interview Dad and get as much information as I could about the property he grew up on, the house, the barn, the path, genealogy, the dream, and all the strange things that he had witnessed, healings, magic, mysticism in the mountains. We pored over maps and records and talked to everyone. Now, my father was a talker, like me. And for a moment, I saw my dad forget about his cancer. Just a little. Our last day in Wayne, I decided to try and make it out to the mountain myself. And all I had was napkin sketches of my father when he was 17, 18 years old. And a few maps we found at the courthouse. I hiked that mountain for 5 hours that day. Just as it started to rain, I was about to call it a day, and I saw an unmistakable rectangular patch of bright yellow daffodils. Those were Grandma Ida's favorite flowers. So the house and the barn were long gone, but the flowers came back every year, as if to say, here was once a home. I returned to the motel, told my dad I was absolutely elated, and then suddenly I was filled with epic regret. Why didn't I bring a shovel? Why didn't I bring a metal detector? I could have put this to rest. My father smiled reassuringly and said, but now you know the spot. One day you'll find it. 1 month later, just a week before his birthday, my father died. After his funeral, I went back to life. Lots to catch up on. Busy. A short while later, I was at a dinner party at my wife's coworker's house, and the host came up to me and said, oh, Steve, I'm so sorry to hear about your dad, but I heard you took a really great trip with him towards the end. And I said, thank you. And she said, well, why don't you tell me about it? A dangerous thing to say to a storyteller. So I'm telling her the story the same way I'm telling you today. And I mentioned how I wished I'd had a metal detector and a shovel. And a man, I didn't really know, from the back, stood up and said, that's a darn good thing you didn't. Sure would have liked. And he said, if you'd so much as waved a metal detector over that dirt, I'd be committing a felony. You could do it, but that was state land now. So you need to file an ARPA permit, and you need to get permission from the Army Corps of Engineers. And we'd have to do an impact study. There'd have to be a consulting archaeologist. Whoa. I don't know anything about this dude. Like, I don't know anything. He said, well, I know. Well, who the hell are you? But I'm Dwayne. I'm an archaeologist. So Dwayne goes on to tell me that due to the amazing work he had done at Stonehenge in the UK, he kind of made his career, but that effectively had put him on a desk. He was like the name in archaeology, but he was no longer in the field. He effectively rubber-stamped grant applications and proposals to do the work he wanted to do. He'd go on to say, now, if we're going to do this, dude, are you volunteering? I guess I am. So the host of the party was overhearing all this, her face. You know. And she said, what an amazingly fantastic documentary film this would make. I said, yeah, it sure would, but I don't know anything about film. I'm a theater guy, you know, a storyteller, and what do I know about film? But already, in my mind, I was calling this project Thick and Peculiar Mist. That's a line from an Edgar Allan Poe story about this guy who gets a fever and gets lost in the mountains. And he's describing the scene in front of him. It's this fog, this particular mist that hangs in the mountains. That night I talked to my wife Ola about the project, and she suggested that I talk to her coworker, Jake Dodd, another guy I didn't really know, who taught cinema and screen studies at the college. Now, he's a tenure-track professor, and he has 2 young kids. She didn't really think he could get involved, but maybe he could point me in the right direction. Tell me if I was crazy. So I emailed Jake, and he graciously accepted to have a meeting with me later on in the week. Now, the day came for the meeting, and I realized I didn't know where his office was. So I got on the website, tried to find Jake Dodd, Cinema Screen Studies. I realized not only does he teach cinema and screen studies, he specializes in documentary filmmaking. Specifically, documentary filmmaking of family histories. And his master's dissertation was on Edgar Allan Poe, in which he worked with archaeologists who worked with real artifacts from Poe's life. So the coincidences were far too many. He was in. His wife might hate him, but he was in. And this started a string of circumstances. Things like this just kept happening. I don't have enough time to tell you about them all tonight, but they're numerous. So later that day, I talked to my wife again about what Jake had said, and I told her that I wasn't sure if I could do this project and continue working at the theater full time. I just feel like I keep putting it on the back burner, like my dad. I'd be 60-something, probably die of pancreatic cancer, and never be done. Did she think we could do it on the single salary? So she agreed that it would obviously be an adjustment, but she could see how much it mattered to me. And she supported me no matter what we decided. We decided to sleep on it. So that night I had a dream in which I found myself in a van. You know the big 12-passenger ones with the doors on the side and in the back? And there was a bunch of people. I didn't recognize any of them. It was one of those dreams where you're trying to figure things out as you go along. I said, oh, okay, I'm dreaming, but I'll see where this goes. And the van's on the interstate. We pull over into a rest stop. I think there was a scenic overlook. And there's a short gal who's a little mean and has a clipboard. And I thought, well, she seems to know what she's doing. And so I'll hang around her. And she says, all right, everybody, that's the 5 minutes back on the bus. So I'm helping people load their bags that they've gotten out during the break. And getting ready to get back to the van. And I hear a voice to my left say, are you ready? Are you ready to go? The voice I'd never forget. It's a voice I hadn't heard before. It was my father. And suddenly it was clear to me, in a flash of lucidity within the dream, just like my father's dream, his grandfather, I knew what trip this was. I suddenly knew who these people were. We were going to Stonewall District in West Virginia to find out what was buried in the ground off of Brush Creek, Randall Bill's farm. The next day I woke up, drafted a letter of resignation, and I quit my job. We've been to West Virginia 3 times now. That's some of the footage that you've seen. Dwayne keeps telling me we need more people and more time, both of which cost more money. 3 days isn't going to cut it, he says. We need 3 weeks at least to start. What I first thought would be a relatively short project, an homage to my father, a way to work through grief, I now realize might be my life's work. I dreamt of Dad and Granny feeding a lot after he died. And it took me a while, but starting in December this last year, I began a dream journal. So in the beginning, I wouldn't really remember a lot of my dreams. It'd be fuzzy or circumstantial. This person was here, and I didn't really remember what we were doing. The more I wrote them down, the more I remembered. The more I remembered, the more detail it gave. Some of the details so vivid, you could taste it, literally. I also learned that if I didn't write the dream down the moment I woke up, it was gone. Forever. Sometimes within minutes. Reminded me of that fall in the mountains. Oof. I've learned that there's hardly ever a silly dream. A number of dreams where I think, well, that's absolutely ridiculous. It's a bunch of random synapses firing in my brain. I go on to write down and realize a much more profound meaning. I wish I could share some of these dreams with you, but I don't have time tonight. But what I can tell you is that some of them have been so profound and have met me in a place in my life that was so impactful that I would wake up and literally weep. You see, in the beginning, I was eager to put my dreams to rest. Let them stay in the realm of the dream world so I could get back to my life. I don't feel that way. Now I believe that no dream is too small. This story has no ending because it's still going, still dreaming. And that's what I want. I wanted to share a story with you tonight. It's like my dream, sometimes absolutely fantastic, full of mystical characters and magic. And you wake up in the morning and you tell your friend and they're like, well, then what happened? And you're like, well, I don't know, I woke up. I want to know what happens when we allow ourselves to dream just a little bit more. What happens when we give our dreams, figurative or literal, a little more space to breathe, a little more attention. I can tell you what happened to me. While I may have only found an old pocket knife and a bunch of trash in the last 3 years of archaeology, I found family members I never knew I had. I've heard stories you cannot imagine. I've made new friends and met people that helped me do crazy, impossible things. My story doesn't have an ending yet because I'm still dreaming, but now I can give my dream that space. I can share it with you and let it breathe. When I do, amazing things happen. So whether there's a box of gold buried in West Virginia or not, I don't know. More importantly, I'm not really interested in proving it one way or another. Sure wouldn't be cool to find. But what I found in this project is way more valuable. I found me. So what happens from here? I don't know. Tune in next summer, and I'll let you know how the dream has grown, how the story continues. This is a living story based off of a dream that was inspired by a story of a dream. And it's mine. I appreciate you all listening tonight. And if you have the courage, I encourage you to follow your dreams. That way when we meet again, I can hear your stories too.